So as we just discussed in class, there's a couple different ways to find the midpoint between two given points. You can just kind of use the slope and count up and over and try to find the halfway point. You can use the distance between the x-coordinates and the distance between the y-coordinates and find the halfway point of those. But there's one formula that kind of does all that work together all in one step, kind of like the distance formula, and that is the midpoint formula. So the midpoint, careful, we're not just going to write m because m stands for slope. So, you can abbreviate it as MDPT. So the midpoint, m, that's a D there, MDPT, the midpoint of 2 points is, and remember, we're talking about ordered pairs here. It's not going to be a number for an answer. It's not like the distance formula where the answer is going to be 7 or 2 radical 3. Midpoint is going to be an x comma y pair. And all it is the average of the 2 x-coordinates and the average of the 2 y-coordinates. All right, and you guys know average of things, you add them up and divide it by the number of data. So in this case, we just have an x1 and an x2. So the average of the x-coordinates is the x1 plus the x2 divided by 2. And the y-coordinate of the midpoint is y1 plus y2 over 2. And that's it. So where the distance formula has minus signs in there, the midpoint is always plus. x1 plus x2 over 2, y1 plus y2 over 2. So let's try one. And like I showed you last video, if you want to label these as x1, y1, and x2, y2, you can. But we're going to find the midpoint. x1, 6, plus x2. So here's where you have to be careful. Remember, it's just the average of the 2 coordinates. You don't want to combine x's with y's. It's just x1 plus x2. So here's something you have to be careful of. Notice our x2 is a negative 3. Sometimes people see that negative and they just go overboard with it and they do a minus a negative 3. Remember, it's just x1 plus x2. Only in this case, that x2 just happens to be negative. It doesn't change anything. So x1 plus x2. 6 plus negative 3 divided by 2. y1 plus y2 over 2. And we simplify. 6 plus a negative 3. So that's just 6 minus 3, which is just 3 over 2, comma, 1 plus 5 is 6 over 2. In that, we can simplify. 3 over 2, you can leave that as a fraction. 3 over 2, if you want to call it 1.5, you can. Both would be correct. And 6 divided by 2 is just 3. There's your answer. Don't add anything together. Don't combine those numbers. That's your answer. Simple as that. All right, and they could be negatives in other cases. They could be decimals. They could be fractions. But you're just finding the average of the x-coordinates and the average of the y-coordinates. Here's your homework question. So that is on your online homework check, which you will be doing in class today. So you can show your work right there. Rewatch that if you think you need a little extra help on it. But if you feel ready, go ahead and try it out and submit that in your homework check. So that's one way you will see the midpoint formula being used. Here's the other way, and I'm going to show you the way I think is easiest. I will give you other options, but let's try number 3 now. So here's the difference. In number 3 and 4, I want you to find the end point given the midpoint and the other endpoint. So here's the key. Let me get this out of the way. So in this problem, and we've talked a little bit about this, the key for this year is just reading carefully. We are given the midpoint. Okay? So we want to find the other endpoint. We're kind of working backwards here. So it says point M is the midpoint of QT. So there's our key. We have the midpoint. We basically have the answer. So let me show you one way to do this. We know the midpoint M is 2, 0. So instead of writing the midpoint equals, we know the point 2, 0. That's our answer. Equals x1 plus x2 over 2, y1 plus y2 over 2. So in this case, we'll call that x1 and y1. What we don't know is the other endpoint. So we don't know the x2 and the y2. All right, you guys follow me? We know the midpoint. We know the answer. But we don't know that other endpoint. So what we can do is write 6 plus x2 over 2, and then y1, which is negative 2 right there, plus y2 over 2. And now you can just kind of guess and check and start plugging in numbers to see what gives you the right answer. I would recommend against doing it that way. So I'm going to get out a little line here. I'm going to put a cross through that. Well, I guess I stayed green. All right, I'm going to recommend not doing it that way. I'll show you a little bit easier way to do it, and then you can try one on your own on your homework check. So I have a chart here set up for you. I want you to use mine for this one. On the next problem, you can kind of set up your own chart. But it's really just kind of finding your own rhythm here. It's using your common sense to find out that other endpoint. So what I'm going to do, you can see I labeled all my points. Point Q, we know the midpoint, we call that M, and we have the other endpoint, point T. So we know the coordinates of Q right there. We know Q is 6, negative 2. All right, there's our X and there's our Y. We know the midpoint, M, is 2, 0. What we don't know are the endpoints of T. All right, we don't know that other endpoint. So what you're going to do here is just kind of use kind of a pattern. You're going to find the rhythm here. So you see to go from 6 to 2. So that's our X coordinates. We started at 6, we went down to 2. That's a difference of negative 4. All right, you guys with me? From 6 down to 2, we went minus 4. So we're going to go minus 4 down to T. So from 6 to 2, and then from 2, right, we're up 2 points. The other team scores 4 on us. Now we're down to negative 2. So you can see there's the pattern. There's the rhythm I was talking about. 6, down to 2, down to negative 2. It's the same pattern around our midpoint. So now for the y coordinates, negative 2 to 0. So you got to be really careful with your signs here. From negative 2 up to 0, we're getting bigger. That's positive 2. All right, you guys follow me? So that we're going to go the same distance. Remember, the answer is not just necessarily going to be 2 here, although I think it works out that way. All right, so it's not the difference. That's not our answer. That's not the answer. We have to use the pattern to get us there. So from negative 2 up to 0, that's positive 2. Now we're going to go up another 2 to get to our other endpoint. So actually it worked out that it is the answer. That was just a coincidence. But that's how I would recommend doing this. Just kind of set up a chart and follow the pattern. So the answer, point C, is negative 2, 2. Right there. Okay, so that's all I'm going to do for you now. Where's my stars? There they are. So your other homework question is right here, number 4. That's in your online homework check, so you can show your work right here. I would recommend practicing getting that chart set up. So along this left-hand side, that's the X and the Y coordinate. Along the top there, that's where your points are. So the midpoint and the 2 endpoints. Then you're just going to find that rhythm. Okay, so try it out. If you don't get it right the first time, give it another shot. Try to find your mistake. But there is your homework assignment for class today. And then after this, we're going to practice midpoint in our groups. Okay, see you next time.